Forstall, Chapter 12. The next morning, Joe and Vince and me met me in my office before school like we planned the night before. We chose a time so early it was still dark outside. As much as our bloodshot eyes hated us for that, it was essential that we had not been seen doing what we were about to do, or we could all kiss our futures goodbye. Expulsion doesn't look good on permanent records, even if the importance of those things is a little overblown by adults. We put on ski masks in case we were caught. Then we'd still have a chance to run and possibly get away without being identified. We nodded to one another and left my office, creeping through the halls, staying low and close to the walls. Soon we arrived at the fourth grade locker bay. I looked at the printout of locker assignments that I'd acquired earlier this year by helping out an administration office student assistant with a problem involving her parents and some boy who apparently had really dreamy eyes. We stopped in front of our target's locker. You have the key? Joe asked me. No, we came all this way and I forgot to check, I said. Joe rolled his eyes. I was just asking. I smiled at him and held up the small brass-colored key. Vince and Joe nodded, but if there was such a thing as a nervous nod, those were it. We all knew how serious searching through another kid's locker is, especially if you broke in by using the master key. That's right, I was holding the master key to every locker in the school. How did I get such a key? Well, there's actually a pretty cool story that explains it all. How I got my office and keys to the school and all sorts of other perks, such as the locker master key. Remember how I said before that I'm in tight with the janitor? Well, it's a long story, but I don't think you'll mind. It all started a couple years ago. At that time, I didn't have the cool office in the East Wing boys' bathroom. Back then, we operated a business inside two giant tires on the far side of the grade school playground. It wasn't much. I mean, it was just two huge tires that they stuck in the ground for kids to climb on, but it didn't. But it did the job. The tires were pretty big, and they provided just enough privacy for us to run our business. Of course, back then things were much simpler. We didn't handle the same sorts of problems, and the tires were really all we needed. To be honest, a lot was different back in those days. I even had a different strongman. We called him Bazan. The story of what happened to good old Bazan is pretty long and complicated itself, so I'll leave that for some other time. Anyways, like I was saying, back then business was pretty simple. I worked out of the tires with Vince and Bazan and mostly just handled easy stuff like writing kids notes to give to their crushes or maybe getting them snacks that their parents wouldn't buy for them. Young kids had a lot of simple problems that they just couldn't solve themselves, so business was booming. But it, where was I? Where was I? Business was booming, but it was booming in a small sort of way because they also didn't have much money. About that time, the school was experiencing some problems of its own. It seemed that some kid had been splattering the school with graffiti. It was everywhere in the bathrooms, on the sides of the buildings, on lockers, on walls, on the trophy case. The artist even managed to tag the principal's door. The coolest part was that the graffiti wasn't lame stuff like the name of a dumb saying. It was actually really awesome caricatures of all the school teachers and stuff like the lunch ladies and counselor. The drawings were really funny, and they pointed out the teacher's funniest parts. Like Mr. Dickerson, the graffiti version had that really huge balding head and big creepy eyes, just like the real Mr. Dickerson. One of the math teachers, Mr. Thompson, had two big front teeth, and this graffiti picture had even bigger front teeth and and little bunny ears. My favorite was this drawing of a history teacher named Mr. Ritter. Mr. Ritter had thick, huge fingers, and in the graffiti drawing, his fingers were giant sausages. Everybody started calling him Sausage Fingers. It was a little obvious, but still pretty hilarious. Pretty much all the kids loved the graffiti drawings, but of course the teachers really hated them. After a few weeks, the artist had drawn almost all of the school staff and still hadn't been caught. It's pretty amazing, really, especially with all the teachers on high alert. He was so good at not getting caught that all the kids started calling him the graffiti ninja. Not even the students knew his real identity. After this had gone on for a while, the school began to put serious pressure on the janitor to clean up all the graffiti as soon as possible. The problem was that the graffiti ninja used a Magnum 44 marker to do his drawings. I don't know if you've ever seen a Magnum 44 marker, but they're huge. They're like almost the size of a baseball bat practically, and they smell like a bajillion chemicals all mixed together with gasoline. The ink is almost impossible to wash off. In fact, to this day, you can still see the faint outlines of some of the graffiti ninja's work. So the janitor was pretty frustrated. It wasn't easy cleaning up all the graffiti all the time, not to mention all the usual stuff he had to clean around the school, like toilets and whatnot. He didn't know where to turn, and I suppose that's why he eventually came to me. That's why most people come to me, because they don't know what else to do. I'm still not entirely sure how he found out who I was and what I did. I know he had a son who was just a few years older than me, so it's likely that one night when the janitor was crying during dinner or something because of all the stress he'd had lately, because of all the graffiti ninja, his son told him about Vince's and my business and how I always imagined. That's how I always imagined it went. Anyways, either way, the point is that the janitor didn't come to me for help. Either point, the janitor did come to me for help, and I had to say he looked pretty funny too, with his legs folded under him like a pretzel crammed inside the giant tire, like a foot-long hot dog on a regular-sized bun. So what can I do for you? I asked him after Vince gave me a nod and walked back to his post outside the tire. I touched my fingertips together in front of me like I was holding a sub sandwich and was about to take a bite. He looked like he was trying to hide a smirk. That was okay, though. Adults never take little kids seriously. I was used to it. Well, I want you to find the kid who has been making those drawings all over the school, and I'd really like it if you could somehow get him to stop, he said. I nodded and tapped my fingers together. That would be quite a challenge, I said. The janitor was smirking again. I ignored it. You do know that my services are not free, yes? Especially for a favor of this magnitude. Oh, yes, I'm well aware of that. Thank you, Mac, he said, still smiling. Okay, then. I think I may be able to help you, but I can't guarantee anything. I'll see what I can do, and then I'll contact you later. How does that sound? That sounds good. Thanks again, Mac, he said. But he said it in a way that adults sometimes talk to kids, how they draw out each word and then make a high pitched in the end, like they're saying, "Oh, you're so cute because you're a kid, and I know that whatever you say doesn't really matter." That's kind of how he spoke to me, but I didn't care. I knew the best way to get him to take me seriously was to just go and solve his problem. So that's what I did. The first step was to call a meeting. I had Bazan and Vince round up a huge group of kids to meet me in the large tires. There was probably about 10 kids total, and they were all gossip girls, kids on the junior debate team, ballet dancers, kids who loved James Bond movies, nosy kids, basically everybody who I thought would be good at either gathering information or sneaking up on people. Okay, I've gathered you all here because I have a mission for you, a mission for which you will be paid very well, I said. A murmur rippled through the kids. Grade school kids do not get money very often unless they have an allowance or a paper route, and those only get them so far. The mission is for you to discover the identity of the graffiti ninja. This time they erupted in conversation. It was like I had just told them to find out whether or not aliens really existed. It was a task thought to be impossible and a little silly. How are we like supposed to do that or whatever? One of the gossip girls said. You just need to do what you do best. Find the gossip, find the dirt. You ballet dancers sneak around all day, try to catch them in the act. Debate kids, you grill everybody you come across. Nosy kids, you spy on everybody and anybody. Look for inky fingers or magnum-sized bulges in backpacks. And all of you just keep your eyes open and ears peeled. If you Eyes and ears peeled, sorry. If we all do this together, we will find out who he is, I said. They stood there looking at me. Okay, you can go to earn your money now, I said, and I clapped a few times. The group slowly dissipated. I turned to Vince after they were gone. What do you think? I think I'd like some peanut butter ice cream right now, he said, with a concerned look on his face. I smiled. I'm serious, Vince. Do you think they have a chance? I'm serious too, Mac. I love PB ice cream. I laughed. Honestly, Mac, I'm not sure if they do have a chance. I think you should look into getting some extra help, he said. Leave it to Vince to give it to me straight. I wasn't sure what else there was I could do, but Vince always had a way of always being right. That was both annoying on one level, but also super beneficial to the success of our business. What do you have in mind? I think you need to think outside the box. Do something drastic. The normal tricks might not be enough for a problem like this. I looked at him and raised my eyebrows. You mean? I started. Yep. I think you should go talk to Tyrrell Alehouse because I think this is going to make or break, be a make it or break it thing for our business. We're paying these kids a lot of money and this is high profile. No reason to hold back now. Vince turned and hopped inside the large tire to rework our books. Just like that, Vince had casually suggested a course of action that would drastically change the face of our business for the better for years to come. That's why, whenever we disagree on something, I usually end up coming around to his argument. In the end, I wasn't sure how make it or break it this case was, But it definitely was the most massive and expensive mission I had ever undertaken, and Vince almost never steers me wrong, so I took his advice and went to go see Tyrrell. Tyrrell Alehouse was this kid obsessed with spying on people and lurking in the shadows and stuff like that. Most kids avoid him because they think he's a creepy weirdo, and he avoids most people because you can't be a spy if you're just being seen. His idols are Nancy Drew, James Bond, and some guy named Shaft, the two dudes called the Hardy Boys. I understand why a lot of kids avoid him. He is pretty strange, but Vince and I know better. I spotted him in the bushes out near the faculty parking lot at that afternoon recess. Hey, your name is Tiro, right? I said. His head popped up from the bushes like a gopher, with one finger pressed against his lips. Then he motioned for me to join him. I climbed back to where he was, wedged between the bushes and the school building. I need your help, I whispered. I have no idea why I had to be quiet, but I didn't want to mess up whatever sort of thing he had going on. What's the problems? You're the problem solving guy, right? MacGyver? He whispered back. Yeah, he nodded. I thought you might be looking for me. How did you know? I asked. I heard you were starting a task force to track down the graffiti ninja, he said. But I only started this morning. How could you know? I asked. Because I was there, he said. But he smiled. Then he shook his head. The first thing you need to know is I'm only seen when I want to be seen. I knew right then that this kid and I were going to have a long and successful business relationship. I filled him in on what I needed and told him what I'd pay for his job. He accepted without a moment's hesitation. I paid him more than anybody I'd ever paid before, which I knew was risky. But without risk, there's no reward. Or as Vince's grandma once said, without risk, there's no such thing as a yakusk. I don't even know what that is, but anyway. And this time, the risk paid off. Tyrrell took to the challenge like my godfather Bruce to a bottle of moonshine. Slowly but surely, the other kids in the task force began to bring me information. It was little at first. The graffiti ninja was supposedly a sixth grader. She was a girl. She struck only during lunch and before school. But it was Tyrrell who busted the case wide open, just like I knew he would. I still don't know how Tyrrell did it, but he somehow got an actual photograph of the graffiti ninja drawing a picture on the gymnasium floor. I remember how my jaw dropped when he showed me the photo inside my tire. How did you get this? I asked. Sorry, Mac, but I can't reveal my methods, he said. I looked at the photo. It turned out the graffiti ninja was this sixth grader named Skylar Kushel. People usually just called her Kush because her name is funny, and that's what kids do when people have odd names. She's a pretty quiet kid, not too popular, but not a complete dork either. She just kind of blended in with the crowd. I called a meeting with her and made my proposal. I would help her make money off her talents if she agreed to stop drawing on school property. I wouldn't even take a cut in the earnings. She agreed, and I set her up with a business selling personalized drawings to kids. Man, did she make a lot of money selling those things for a few years. She's in high school now, and I heard she's already has a few art schools that have been in touch with her. You'd think that the teachers might recognize her style, but maybe some even did. But in the end, they had no proof that the graffiti ninja was her, so there was nothing they could do anyways. Besides, teachers never suspect the good kids of troublemaking, which is partially why Vince and I are able to get away with running our business right under everybody's noses. Anyway, back to the janitor. After I made a deal with Cush, I sent a message home with the janitor's son asking his dad to meet me. Still, I was kind of surprised when he showed up. I figured he thought I was too young to help him. Hey, thanks for coming, I said as he wedged himself inside the tire. Now, my son said you had news for me, he said. I do. I found our graffiti artist, I said. Really? The janitor asked. I could tell he was skeptical, but there was also a glimmer of hope in his eyes. And I got her to stop drawing all over the school. He was silent. He looked at me and shook his head. Then he let out a huge smile spread across his face. Right then, I could tell he's not like the other adults at the school. Are you serious? He said. I nodded. Now it's all just a question of payment. Well, I have money, but I think I can offer you something a little more valuable. I'm listening, I said. Well, there's this bathroom in the east wing. It's missing a toilet, had some plumbing problems, and is way back by the old band room, which is just a storage room now, so hardly anyone ever uses it. I still don't know how they even I still don't know why they even put a bathroom back there in the first place, but I stopped asking the administration those types of questions a long time ago. It's like asking a gerbil to explain quantum physics. Anyway, I was going to recommend to the school that the bathroom be closed down permanently, but I think it might be of better use to you. Think of it as your new office. What do you say?" He smiled, a set of keys dangling from his hand. "Are you serious?" I said. I didn't think adults could be this cool, especially not ones who work for the school. "I sure am, Mac. You saved me a huge headache by getting that kid to stop drawing all over the school. Sorry, drawing on the school. It's the least I could do." "Deal." I took the keys and shook his hand. The East Wing bathroom is a safe place to have an office because really, the janitor is the only school official ever to go in that bathroom. Dickerson never would because of the unfortunate toilet seat incident, and all the other teachers have their own cleaner, bigger bathrooms in the teachers' lounge. So I'm free and clear. And the students don't complain either. Our business helps them out. And like I said before, squealing is not allowed here. The best part was that once word got out that I had orchestrated the unmasking of the graffiti ninja, our business doubled. So that's how the janitor and I started our business relationship. He still comes to me for help from time to time to get kids to stop putting chewing gum under chairs and stuff like that. So I can get pretty much any key I want from the janitor, no problem, no question. But that's the kind of what made this particular mission so dangerous. If we got caught in the school before it opened, I could potentially get the janitor fired and us expelled, which would be about the last thing I'd ever want to see happen. "Hurry up, Mac," Vince whispered. I nodded and slid the key into the small slot on the combination dial. I had to wiggle the key a little as it turned, but eventually a metallic click was followed by a creak of the locker door swinging open. We were in. I wasn't exactly sure what we'd find, but I remembered from our meeting with Jackie Boy that he carried around a notebook of all the bets he'd taken. I just hoped he kept it at school. His locker was a disaster, and we found a surprising amount of loose dollar bills and oddly even a nice collection of little bundles of hair of all different colors. We looked at one another, resisting the urge to ask because none of us actually wanted to know, but then kept searching. Then I found it nestled way back behind a large geography textbook, his little workbook. We flipped it open and scanned the pages together using a small flashlight. When we got to page 13, that's when we saw it. Brady's name, and next to it, a staggering dollar amount with a negative symbol in front of it. Then right after that, in parenthesis, Jackie Boy had scribbled, "Doesn't have the money, will pay with major favor." We didn't want to believe it, but it doesn't get much clearer than that. Brady was our snitch. How could I have been so stupid? I blame myself really for the information leak. The general rule was never to let anyone outside the business know what you were thinking, and I had broken that rule by bringing Brady in. The little snitch. We should do to him what Ronald McDonald does to ketchup packets, Vince said. From the look in his eyes, I could tell it wasn't a joke. That's the thing about Vince that only I know. Most of the time, when people think he's only joking around, he's actually being serious. Joe laughed, but he didn't sound all that amused. "We should make copies of this book." I was just about to agree when the hallway lights flicked on. We froze. That meant it was 7:05. Teachers would be showing up at any minute. There just wasn't time. We shoved the book back into the hiding spot, slammed the locker shut, and took off, sprinting towards the nearest exit. After removing our masks, we circled the block and came back through the another door, as if we were just arriving.